This is the Extremists Podcast. I am Alex. I'm your center position, and I'm joined here today by my fellow hosts. Our host for the Lib Left is August.
Hello.
The host for Lib Right is Cole.
How you doing?
Ava is our Auth Left position.
Hi.
And Micah is our Auth Right position.
Yo.
If you're listening to this on YouTube or any other platform where there's video and audio, you'll see a graphic of some kind on your screen. If you're listening to this with audio only, which is most likely Spotify or Anchor, feel free to relax, settle in for a nice episode. This one hopefully will be interesting. If you'd like to support us, you can continue to do so by checking out our link tree. You can find that in the description of the video as well as on our Instagram. Our link tree will lead you to our Discord, our Instagram, our other social medias, as well as our Spotify and our YouTube and anything like that. If you listen to us on Spotify or on Anchor, you'll be able to support us monetarily, as we do have advertisements on there. So thank you for that. Today's episode is abortion. At least that's the opening topic. Does anybody want to open on the specific topic of abortion?
Well, I guess we should first come out and say that most of us are pro-life. That's correct. Besides
Yeah.
August.
So, August is the only one here who I think is firmly pro-choice. Actually, I don't know if August told me. I just assumed it because of his position. August.
That is a safe assumption, yes.
That's okay. And I'm somewhat on the fence, I guess. Not as much of on the fence as the third position. But
Yeah,
that's...
in our discussions, it's kind of seemed like most of us were pro-life or leaning that way, except for August. And so we can start with pro-life versus pro-choice, and then we can kind of go into how the gradients they're in, because I know some people are more pro-life and some people are more pro-choice than others, depending on like where in the time frame of the pregnancy.
Right. Okay. Cole, you want to start with your position?
Sure. So I pretty much all of this comes down to the non-aggression principle for me. So I think abortion is murder 100% of the time. So from conception to the birth, that's a human, and that human has rights and it has the right to life. So any type of just removing that life is immoral. I do have one exception, and it is in the health of the mother. And in that situation, I really think it comes down to a decision between the mother and the father on how to go from there. But I think that's the only time I would say that it is acceptable to have an abortion.
Right. Okay.
This is totally based on the philosophy of non-aggression principle, and also some on science, the research, and about. I can do a religious argument, but I know it doesn't really hold water to non-religious people.
Micah.
But it's not like non-religious. That's not saying that arguments are bad, but it's just people that are atheists are like, I don't give a shit.
Yeah,
Right.
that's what I was saying when I said I wouldn't give a religious argument for this.
I think you should, if you'd like.
Yeah, I think you should, Micah.
If that's the
I
position
think
you come
that
from.
would go well with your quadrant, but it is an argument to be made.
It is, but I mean, it means nothing to someone who doesn't believe the same thing I do.
I mean, there's also people who try not to live their lives by what is considered scientific or logical. That sounds really out of left field to say, but as many people who would disregard a religious argument, there's probably a fair number of people who would disregard a scientific or a logical argument.
Exactly, and I think I can make the religious argument because I do have. I mean, it's kind of it is religious for me also, but I think Micah, you're the one that's best to argue from that standpoint. I would like to hear other people's what they think about
August, what's your counter review to that?
All right, so my biggest thing about being pro-choice with it is because there's a lot of not what's the word, black market operations, but sort of if
Under
we
the
make
table?
it something, yeah, like if we make it something that is like it's like a standard medical procedure. It's not something that people have to go like in the back rooms for. It's like it's not like something that is like taboo. It can make it to where procedures like that are a lot like less likely to have anything go wrong, and just overall
Okay.
like,
Why don't we just make murder illegal?
First of
while we're
first of all, August, you're wrong. Let me explain. So, I was doing my research on this, and did you know that 90%, like over 90% of these quote back alley abortions are actually performed by physicians, and more people die from legal abortions than illegal abortions? So in the like the year that abortion was legalized, more people died of legal than illegal abortion.
I feel like that probably has something to do more with just the time frame of when that was happening, because that honestly makes no sense to me whatsoever.
Also, I think that there was a flaw with you saying that that if okay, if we just ban abortions now, well, people are gonna get them anyways. That's the argument that you were making, right?
Yeah.
Okay, why don't we just make murder legal while we're at it?
I mean, that is a very good logical fallacy for you to go off on, and I feel like that can be said to literally anything. Like the whole slippery slope thing. It doesn't really like stand in like the real world, because if you were to actually like apply this, it doesn't like it's like obviously no one's saying, hey, let's just make shooting people in the head legal. We're just saying
No,
like,
but
hey,
I'm
medical
saying like
procedure.
it's going to, yeah, it's going to happen, but it's going to happen less when it's illegal.
Okay, well, do you hold the same stance for what's the word? Crap, I can't think of it. God, this is terrible. No. Like getting snipped for males. What's the official word for that?
Oh, circumcision.
No.
Circumcision.
Wait, getting snipped
no,
how? Are you
yeah.
talking about like a vasectomy?
Yeah,
Yeah,
vasectomy.
vasectomy.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
that. Do you hold the
Oh,
same
I mean,
stance for
getting
that?
snipped just made me think of circumcision.
I mean,
Well, yeah, but like, I feel like no, I feel
Like
like
we're talking about
vasectomy.
babies, and you started like getting snipped and boys. Like there's only one thing.
Yeah, I think your question led to the circumcision thing.
Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway.
I'm not too sure what you're talking about. Like,
So like obviously like there's also the female equivalent of like just having your tubes tied to like prevent like overall like having a child, but I feel like they still achieve the same thing, and I feel like one of them is heavily stigmatized negatively, and the other one is just like, oh yeah, well that's just a decision that a male can make. So I feel like abortion itself is only an issue because of how like heavily weighed against females society is.
I think it's
Well-
more because there's a life involved.
I
Like,
mean,
Exactly.
yeah.
That's the way I
Well-
see it, because like, no, let me.
If there was no murder here, I would not be against it.
Well, I mean,
Exactly.
Well, when you look at how sperm works, like yeah, it's not actually fertilizing an egg, but like every one of those sperm cells has the potential to fertilize an egg. So if you don't
Yes.
fertilize every single egg with every single sperm cell, then you're a murderer.
No.
Because the
I don't
sperm
know.
on its own is not a life.
Well,
but
yeah,
I'm
but like
saying the potential of life is life. You're equating the potential to life as life. I don't think that's. I mean, that would be like. I mean, I guess that's why some people are like, I'm okay with what's it called, birth control, because
Yeah.
it does not destroy a life. It prevents life from happening. So like it's
Exactly.
on the other side of it. So
See, like, yeah, even though I have like a religious kind of view on it, the way that I see it is pretty much the same way that Cole sees it. It's because, you know, not everybody has that religious viewpoint, and so instead of having to go that extra mile and like keep abortion legal, I think the way that people should go about it is make birth control more accessible to people so they don't need to get an abortion, because when you use birth control, then you don't have to worry about a life being involved, and if you use it correctly and things go according to plan, then you should be okay. And in the off chance that something goes wrong, then I believe that like in that off chance, then I don't understand what's so wrong with like adoption and that kind of stuff. And they say that like you're putting a child into a negative system, but really it still gives them a shot at life, where if they were to just
Me
be
on my way to go
aborted-
stab a poor person for being poor.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I guess
Like I've
that-
actually
go ahead.
I've heard like a lot of like I don't have the stats sitting right there in front of me, but like people who are going to have an abortion, like they want to get an abortion, like if it's made illegal, like logically they would put their child up for adoption then. And
Yes.
I don't know if anyone
Good.
in this, I don't know if anyone in this call has been through the system when it comes to that, but it's actually not really like a good, like even like yeah, they're getting a
My
shot at
brother's
life. But it's,
adopted.
okay, well I'd imagine you could probably ask him. It actually like enables a lot of child abuse. Like when you actually start to look at all of the cases of that, and like the majority of them are actually
so just kill him instead.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great idea.
I understand where I was coming from, because it's it's like, would you rather go through pain, like something terrible, or not have gone through it all, but you also wouldn't live? I mean, it's I guess it's been a history kind of thing about there's a story about, would you rather have love and lost it than never loved at all? I mean, would you rather have life and it'd be terrible, or never have life at all? But I think that's more of a thing a person should be able to decide, not someone else for somebody, because
Yeah.
And that's your
I'm
libertarian.
not saying I agree with
opinion.
suicide, but I'm saying like
Yes.
it does stand to reason that it's not someone else's decision what you do with your own body.
And see, I feel like a lot of you guys, like people, like everyone who's like making the argument against abortion, they're saying like, I don't morally agree with this. Like it's like a moral thing, but we're not talking about what people's personal beliefs are. We're talking about an actual law. We're talking about what the government would enact into policy for the entire country, not just a select few who don't like it.
Yeah, that's what I kind of want to hear.
I
hear what your like the perfect system would be for them.
Yeah, so like the perfect system would like it would be to make it legal, but for people who are against it, they just don't get an abortion then.
So you're kind of like the like
Well, I mean, that's still I mean, saying abortion is murder. I mean, that still means that there are abortions happening. Like the people that are against it aren't just against it for people they know. They're against it for everyone, because that they believe that's still people being murdered.
I mean, yeah, when you look at it, it technically is that. Like, I'm not gonna try and defend that point, because there's a lot of people who say like, oh well, the fetus isn't a person or stuff like that. I've seen like from a lot of different sources. I've seen from some sources that a fetus can support itself from like 5 weeks or something like that. That's probably like really asking. Like I've read like a lot of sources that may have been misleading, but I'm gonna be honest, I don't often get a straight answer on when a fetus is considered a human. So I would consider all fetuses like human lives, yes, but so it's still like.
So you're basically just condoning murder.
I mean, you can
coming from a like a biological kind of moral sense. You're coming from like the utilitarian kind of sense of, listen, people are going to do this regardless. Let's give them an avenue to do it safely.
Mostly that, yeah, and also like the whole like adoption system. It just isn't really the best. Like I'm sure there are people who have anecdotes about it, but like statistics don't really like they're free of anecdote.
So no, see, Cole with his that's because it's government funded. No. Cole thinks everything that's government funded is just bound to be bad, but then you look at things that are like yes, I love myself a Pepsi law firm, and yes, I love private prisons.
So I think the topic of illegal versus illegal and whether people are going to do it regardless, that's an interesting topic, and we see that applied to things like drugs, and we see that applied to things like abortions. And with drugs, places where drugs are completely legalized, like Portugal and Switzerland, all drugs are completely legal, and the state provides you with a medically pure version of it. When that happened in Portugal, I believe drug use dropped 80%.
Did you just Did you cut out for everyone or just me? I didn't hear any of that.
Do you want me to restart?
I heard all of it.
Okay.
Essentially, Portugal and Switzerland with drugs, they said, okay, well, people are going to do this regardless. Let's legalize it. Let's see if that cures our drug issue, because both of them had horrible drug epidemics. And Portugal, I think, saw an over 80% drop in drug usage, and Switzerland, I think, saw around 90% drop. And that was when drugs were completely legalized and the state completely provided.
Heroin.
It was medically pure heroin and stuff like that. Heroin was the big one, at least in Switzerland.
I think
the
difference with
abortion, according
to
to multiple sources, including a British medical journal. I know British people. British medical journal Lancet, quote, Western Europe, where abortion is widely available, has an abortion rate that is 43% lower than the rate in the United States, a place where abortions are somewhat illegal. So if we were to legalize abortions and provide safe teaching, I don't think that we see articles all over the place where partially.
It's been legal since Roe v. Wade, so
there's certain states that are banning it, isn't there? Yeah, it's kind of but Western Europe where it's completely legalized. If it were to be completely legal and we provided safe sex ed, not to the point where we're seeing articles where kids are being taught like about anal sex and BDSM and stuff like that, like just safe, plain
why would you teach
sex
children
ed.
about that?
It's happening in certain schools now. And that's a whole separate
disgusting.
topic.
What?
It is completely disgusting. But if we were to legalize it and see a drop in abortion rates over what we see when it's illegal, would it be better to keep it legal?
I would say, yeah, but also I don't think it should be subsidized. So, like, I don't know about Europe. I don't know. I mean, you had the.
I don't think that's the case though.
But I'm saying, is it subsidized in Europe? Like, is it like how
is it covered under healthcare?
Gosh,
I'm not completely sure. I'm gonna be real with you.
That's cool because it does stand to reason if
privatized abortion clinics.
I think that would be.
I mean, Planned Parenthood is just a
$multi-million
multi-million-dollar company, so like.
Well, if people pay for it themselves,
and that's
instead of like a government coming, listen, we'll foot the bill. You can just get rid of your child whenever you want. I think that's terrible. That's awful.
I think you should pay in some way. And I suppose I said earlier that I'm on the fence. I see a big argument pro-abortion, and I see a big argument not even pro-abortion. I don't think anyone is pro-abortion. Nobody's pro-abortion. Abortion is a very heavy topic. It is not as simple as pro-choice versus pro-life. It's heavy.
With that.
Things like miscarriages are heavy. Losing a child, you still have that potential for life. Whether you argue that it's actual life or not, and whether it is murder or not, is up to you and who you argue with. But the fact is, and everybody can agree, that it is a potential for life. And yes. I think that the big argument, at least what I hold, that is pro-choice, is that I don't think the government should have a say in what you do with your own body, right? The government should not force you to carry a child, right? But what I see as an argument against that, and that's why I think I lean a little bit more pro-life, is abortion is not as simple as a way of birth control. And I think that too many people see it as that. Abortion is not birth control. Sex is not only for pleasure. At the baseline understanding of sex, it is for reproduction. When you have sex, you risk that. You can take precautions, you can take birth control, you can get an implant, you can have a condom. There are a multitude of ways to prevent. But, there's a big-ass garbage truck outside my house. You might hear that in the background. At the end of the day, it is not for pleasure, it is for reproduction. And you are taking that risk when you have sex.
I'm not gonna lie, I think it should only be for reproduction purposes, but people are all ooga booga.
Ooh, this feel good.
Getting back to the actual
why can't people just why can't people just not do that? I don't know. I guess that's just kind of a personal thing. It makes me personally uncomfortable, so that's more of a personal thing than a political thing, but
But anyways, getting back to the the actual societal implications of a government telling you what you can and can't do. When you look at one of the biggest states that's been a proponent against having legalized abortion, Mississippi is probably one of the first that comes to mind. And looking at Mississippi's actual history on to live in, the 19th Amendment, the one that gave women the right to vote, wasn't ratified in the state until 1984. And the 13th Amendment outlawing slavery wasn't ratified until 2013. So looking at this trend of...
But the thing is, though, I didn't see any slaves in 2012.
So,
I'm going to keep it real with you.
It's already
not-
explained, and you'll learn this in like any law class or criminal justice class. Federal law, in any sense, overcomes state law, and of course that's argued with like drugs and stuff like that. But at the baseline end of it, federal law will always trump state law. That's been true for decades.
Yeah, and also there is a very weird thing with state politics about about different laws and ratifying things too. So, like Alabama in 2002, I think it was 2002, finally outlawed. You're gonna make fun of me for this, but they did finally outlaw incest, and it was only by a 55% vote.
Why? Oh, that's disgusting.
But anyways, back to the point I was trying to make there is it's like you have to look at the implications of what that means. Like a state that is actively trying to take away that right from women, and then it's also has a track record of, hey, let's not abolish slavery until a couple years ago.
I think it's more of just they kind of forgot about it.
I'm sure.
I'm
I don't think
they
it's as much
definitely
as
didn't
that.
fight a war over it or anything.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing is, like you said, it was federal law, and so they're like, what's the point in doing all this work to ratify it if there's nothing's gonna change?
It's a symbolic thing. Like I don't think you're getting what I'm trying to say.
I understand that's a
It's
symbolic
not.
thing, but like,
Just forgot
okay,
about it.
so it's symbolic, but when it comes down to the end of the, and this was the same thing with like,
my stand to live and die, and
it's the same thing with like statues, right? There was a whole argument with Confederate statues. I just thought Confederate
Oh my
statues
gosh.
were a waste of taxpayer money. And my dog is going crazy. This is going to be terrible for background noise, but I think it was a waste of taxpayer money. I thought it was an absolute waste, and I think I think that's maybe how they saw it, or at least that's how I think they probably saw it. Was as simple as we don't want to waste taxpayers' money spending time ratifying this.
I don't understand just how society would be better off if abortion was a legal thing. Now, because it's kind of the thing because I mean, being anarchist as I am, I mean, there would be a court system. We talked about this last one, but I'm guessing I kind of want to hear so in like Micah and Ava, like what would be the consequences? Like if someone was caught, like they had an abortion and they were caught or something, what would be the consequence?
Re-education. No, I'm kidding. For legal reasons, that was a joke. Essentially the way I see it is that they shouldn't, I'm big on rehabilitation and that kind of stuff. Yes, I believe in like the prison system, but only to an extent, because I do believe that there are some criminals, and I wouldn't call a woman who got an abortion illegally a criminal personally, but I'm just saying that in different cases some criminals can be rehabilitated and some can't. So I don't completely disagree with the prison system, but I don't completely agree with rehabilitation for everybody. But in this specific case, I believe that, it can be a traumatic experience, and I think that they should be provided with therapy and, let them know that, hey, maybe that wasn't the best option, but we'll help you through this anyways because we can see why you did it and we'll be here for you. But it's just not cool that you did that, and it shouldn't be a thing, Like, I think that we should be there for the people who make those decisions because obviously they're going through a lot. And, I've been in bad places mentally, and so I know what it's like to struggle and be in a tough situation where you may not make the most rational, reasonable choice. And I think that people could be helped with that, and that they should be, let them know that they are loved and cared for regardless of the decision they made, but that the decision they made was not necessarily the right decision.
So there'd be no consequences, what you're saying. Just
Well, see, that's a pretty interesting take on like the actual like the punitive system. Like, why does there have to be a consequence for it anyway?
Yeah, I that's why I kind of want to know if you even thought there should be a consequence. I just didn't know. You say it's illegal, but then if nobody
Yeah. What's
is
the
it really
punishment
illegal?
for it then?
Yeah, it's like
So
like,
is it less
What's
than...
going to deter you from getting an abortion? I mean,
Because you'll
Public
have to
shaming.
go through like Not like.
So
a
is it
rehabilitation.
rehabilitative instead of like punishment?
More or less, but like it's a required kind of like lesson where you learn about the consequences of your actions and like why abortion
Re-education.
isn't.
I mean, if we're saying that that a fetus is a life, I think you should get charged with murder.
Okay, I don't quite agree with that because some people don't some people don't understand that and they can't conceptualize that and they can't quite grasp that concept. And so I feel like through the kind of rehabilitation, you should be stressing that and letting them know that what you did was murder and hey, that's really not cool. And I think that it should be required for them to maybe do like a community service thing or something or other, and
Okay, so
reach them in not a bad like
the thing
concentration camp kind of way, but
since we both agree that abortion is murder, I'm taking this to the extent of what's the difference between getting an abortion and going up to a random person and stabbing them?
Because in today's society, a lot of people do not understand that abortion is murder because there is a big pro-choice kind of movement going on, and people are failing to understand that abortion is actually murder and that it is as bad as it is. So I think after people are educated enough, and I think after a certain amount of time,
so you're just saying like
transition.
over time then, like over time we kind of ditch that system eventually.
But
like the rehabilitation kind of system is more of like a, what do you call it, transitional phase.
Got it.
To help people understand and to educate them on the risks and the negative effects of abortion. And then after a certain amount of time, you would switch that into, this is murder, you already knew this, that kind of thing.
Got it.
Wouldn't that logic follow that then a society that didn't believe that actual murder was murder would be okay? I mean,
society doesn't believe
Aztecs?
that murder is murder?
The Aztecs?
There were a good amount of like societies that didn't believe, that thought that killing people was not even morally wrong, or sometimes it was morally good. And so I do believe in objective morality.
I think that most of modern society is on board with murder is bad.
Modern society, yes. I think there's an island off of India that does not think that, though. And whenever some missionary tried to go preach there, he got freaking stabbed.
So I would ask everyone who is pro-life, do you support the death penalty then?
Only for pedophiles.
I am the largest fence sitter on that.
Actually, no.
I used to fence sit for a while on that, but I actually recently came up with my opinion on that. I don't think the state should have enough power to decide who and who not to kill, except for in the case of pedophiles.
Yeah, because I mean that kind of goes.
That's giving the state way too much power.
Also, the death penalty now is so fucked up anyway that people sit for 30 years on death row waiting to die. I mean, it's really. I mean,
I feel like it's become more symbolic than it has.
You guys keep all cutting out.
I think it's more symbolic anymore, the death penalty, at least in the US. It's becoming more and more symbolic. It's like, oh, you got the death penalty, you got something worse than life in prison, but you're gonna serve 30 years before you're eventually killed,
Right. See, the way that I view it is that people who do bad things should learn that they did bad things, and I think that killing them is the easy way out for them and the people involved in the situation, because they should suffer for their consequences. They shouldn't just, okay, you're gonna be killed now, you won't have to spend all of this time in prison. Because I think that they should be living out the rest of their lives in prison so they know that what they did was wrong and they can feel bad about their decisions and they can reflect on what they did and maybe have a bit of a change of heart, but they're still going to be in prison for the rest of their lives. I don't believe in the death penalty. I used to, but then I realized that it's giving people an easy way out. It's letting people just go and do a bad thing and just say, well, I'm gonna end up dead anyways if I do this.
I think getting sentenced to life is more excruciating than the death penalty.
Exactly.
Because you have to live the rest of your life. But it depends on the
Yeah.
prison, because there's a lot of prisons where you see these people who they repent and stuff like that, and they find God, or even they just educate themselves. And I think there are a few cases of people who are even on death penalty, but just life cases in general, where they got their PhD in prison. I think there was a story of one guy that like decided to learn one new word from a dictionary per day while on death row, and he got his PhD. I might be remembering that story wrong. But
I think it's interesting that when I bring up the death penalty, your guys' arguments switch from, oh, it's a life when it's an abortion, it's a life. We got to save all the lives. But then, that wasn't even mentioned at all when it came to the death penalty.
Oh well, one's innocent and one is
innocent. One is
exactly.
innocent,
that's the point. One
convicted.
hasn't done anything wrong, and one has.
So you're implying that an action can be worth taking a life for.
Mm-hmm.
What?
I mean,
I
yes,
didn't say that. I'm against the death penalty.
Well,
I'm
okay,
kind
so
of on the fence about that. Like
Mike is
I
on the
said.
fence. I already distinguished my position. I'm anti-death penalty, except for in the case of pedophiles. I think that if you're a pedophile, you should be shot in the head.
Yep.
I think that being a pedophile is bad enough to where you should have your life taken away.
Yes, I think any sexual crimes, any of that, it's just horrible, disgusting. I don't understand what goes through people's minds. Like sometimes murder I can understand because like people get angry and stuff, but there's no excuse. Like
Your Honor, my client was angry.
No, that's not like I think they deserve to be punished, but I think that like pedophiles and sexual predators and sex offenders don't deserve to live.
Deserve to be punished.
What?
Okay, so Cole, are you completely Cole?
Who?
The bourgeoisie.
Oh, I mean,
Call me joke.
that's what the gulag camps were for.
Oh, okay, I see.
Right. So Cole, are you like firmly? I don't know if I heard you. Are you firmly pro or against death penalty?
So I'm against death penalty. Yeah, I'm against death penalty, definitely from the state. Now I would be like to clarify. I'm not against defending your property to the point of
I'm sorry. Your watermelon plant grew onto my side of the field. I think I'm gonna have to shoot you in the head for that.
Now there is a difference between, there is a level. Like if someone is threatening
Okay, but what if they violated the NAP ironically?
kind of like, no, officer, I was driving 140 miles per hour.
Ironically.
It was as a joke.
No,
it was
you're
just a prank.
Your Honor, I'm not actually racist. I was just ironic about it. I didn't. Your Honor, how can it be a hate crime if I loved doing it?
Your Honor, my client
would say,
completes it based and red pilled.
I just don't think the state should have that power.
I think it's way too much power for the state.
There is a life there, and I think that is true. Like, the state doesn't have the power to take away a life. Now, individuals that are being threatened or have their property or life like threatened by force, I think have the right to take a life if it comes to that, to protect themselves and their property.
I think landlords should be killed too.
Landlords should get the death penalty.
Not even the death penalty. They should just be. Well, I like.
They should be penalized by death.
Oh. Okay, that was more of an ironic thing. I don't genuinely believe that.
Right.
I don't
and
agree
like,
with the death penalty in most cases. In any cases,
I always find it
actually.
funny when I'm like talking to an extremist and I say, the state shouldn't have that much power, and they're like, yeah, and the state shouldn't have like any power, and I'm like, oh. But I definitely, I remember like being in school and hearing about like the social contract and stuff like that, and like,
bullshit.
I remember thinking the social contract is so stupid. Why would people do that? And now I'm like looking back on it, and I'm like, I think people want to do that because people want a sense of security from a state.
That's exactly right. If we want to get into social contract, we get the social contract because it does underlie anybody outside. I don't know about you, Alex, because you kind of seem like you agree with it. But anybody that does believe in a state must have some sort of way to, get logically to why do they have their power? It must come from the people. But what if the people don't agree?
Right, and that's why I think there should be a balance. But I think that at the ultimate, I think that people should be the people. If they are unhappy, what was it? I think it was like Voltaire. It was somebody. It was somebody during the Establishment. I think it was, not the Establishment, the Enlightenment. Getting my words mixed up here. I think it was Voltaire, but don't quote me on it. said that there is a sort of social contract, but when the people are unhappy with their government, it is not only the right of the people, but the duty of the people to stand up against that government. And I absolutely believe that as well. So I don't as much agree with the social contract as much as I think that people inherently do it.
Yeah, I disagree that people just do it, and they're just like, oh, there is I consent, I guess, without even writing anything down or signing anything to their consent. They just consent, even without just kind of like when you go and buy food. At a store, you don't actually sign a contract and say, I give you this much money, you give me this. It's like we have a contract. It's theoretical, and we just trade, and then we're fine. No one's gonna get upset at each other. But there's no such thing for that for government, because if I go into a store and then I take something and I give them money for it, and they say we don't want that money, I can't just be like, well, too bad, it's mine now. This good is mine now. Or it's even the other way around, where they give me something, they say, now give me money. I say no, and they're like, you have a contract with me. It's like, no, I don't. That it does not follow that the social contract is a real thing, or even holds up to any type of scrutiny. I don't know if any of you else actually believes in the social contract. I would guess Micah would have, and Ava to some extent.
I'm gonna keep it real with you. I'm not really sure what that is.
The social contract, what is the basic definition of the social contract? How would you basically define it?
It would be it's how do you consent to what the government does? So the social contract is...
The social contract is a moral and political philosophy. It originated during the Age of Enlightenment and usually concerns the legitimacy and authority of the state over the individual. Yeah,
so why does the state, any government, have the authority over you? It's because you consent. And it's like, well, I don't consent. It's like, well, you have a social contract that says you consent. If you could consent to them, you would. But that doesn't stand to reason, because I don't consent. And if I could tell them I don't consent, I would tell them that. But so that's where the social contract... So the idea is that it came from John Locke. Life, liberty, property given to you by nature. But the government, in order to protect those rights from other people, they want to protect your rights, but the people have to follow the laws that the government makes. So it's kind of a mutual agreement between the two parties.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I agree with Locke on.
Again, I don't necessarily agree with it. I just think people innately do it. I think people have an innate desire to want to live.
Right.
It sucks living alone, and I don't know where I'm going.
Yeah, I'm not going to give my
but...
opinion on any of this, because I'm incredibly uneducated on any of that.
But just based off of that,
probably look into it, Micah, because it is really the basis to any type of authoritarian government, even any government at all. Besides,
I remember learning about it and thinking this is weird, but then I looked more into it, and it makes a lot of sense. And I do agree that people kind of do it inherently. They do it inherently, but I think there should be some sort of physical reminder that, hey, I live under this government.
I think a state should exist because, and that state should have a military, because if they don't, then another state with a bigger military is going to come along. So it's more of, I believe in a state because I think other states are going to come along if we don't have a state.
So you're saying, I like this taskmaster because the other taskmaster is worse?
Pretty much, yeah.
Lesser of two evils.
It's pretty...
okay, I guess it's more of I just believe if we go into anarchy, another state, like I said, is gonna come along and go, hey, this is now mine. So I believe in national sovereignty. So I personally would rather be represented by people from where I live, other than people from Russia or China or something like that.
And the thing comes, where does the state get the power? And that's where the social contract theory comes in at. Why does the state have the right to be okay, you live within our borders, and we'll protect the borders, now you have to pay us. It's well, I don't want to pay you. Too bad you live in our borders. And that's why I don't think... My solution to all of it is, when you turn 18, some government person comes up to your door and says, hey, do you want to sign up to be a American citizen? And they go, and you say yes or no, and they go, okay, you have to pay taxes. You pay taxes on this is how much it is every year. You give us this, and then we provide you with whatever they want to. I mean, it could go as far as off left as you want to, or I mean, just hey, we just have a militia that keeps you safe and that's it. But you have to pay us. And then people decide from there if they want to opt in or not. But that doesn't happen. It's like you're born here, and because I'm on this patch of dirt, this person owns me, instead of if I was born on that patch of dirt over there, that other group owns me. And I just think that's really archaic and dumb.
I think the concept
Yeah.
of countries is weird. Like I like that there are borders, you know, I don't want because there's never going to be world peace. It's just not reasonable. But I just think that it's weird that if you're born on like Cole said, like if you're born on a certain piece of dirt, then bam, you're like belong to that piece of dirt. But I mean, it makes sense.
But I don't see what your solution to that is, if that's a problem, because there's always going to be a country, and if
Exactly.
there's
Well, I
just
agree.
open land, that country is going to come over and go, hey, this is mine now.
No, but I don't think there's always going to be a country, because I think there would be private property. People are like, if any group came to your house and said, this is our house now, you would say, no, this is my house, and they're like, we're going to take it. And it's like, well, you can fucking try. And now,
And what if they show up? What if they show up
Do you
with a
know the
military?
difference between personal and private property? Like personal and private property.
So, I feel like the thing of personal and private property, it just recently became really like distinguished, because there were a lot of people that were like, especially with ANCOMs. ANCOMs were like, we shouldn't have such control with like the border and stuff like that. There shouldn't be things like ICE. We shouldn't control the border. We should have open immigration. And the counter to that was always, do you lock your door at night? Right? You have an innate desire, or an implicit desire, whichever word you'd like to use more, to protect your own private property. And so they came up with this whole idea of like personal property. And I don't know if Marx talked about, I don't remember. I've read the manifesto, but it's been a few years.
No, that's what they did in like the Soviet Union and whatnot. Like people had their own houses; they were given like homes.
Yeah, but
but that was
it became a little blurred, and there were issues with like, there was that whole story with Germany where they, at least with East Germany and a lot of the Iron Curtain, they were given like such shitty cars. They weren't allowed to have really good cars. And I had a grandpa who was able to take one of those cars, and these cars were so bad that he bought one, and it broke down almost immediately, and he decided to take the engine out and he replaced it with a lawnmower engine, and it ran.
Oh yeah, that's the
I don't remember the name of the car, but when East Germany and West Germany reunited, those cars were abandoned everywhere, all over East Germany. They were just completely abandoned because they were such shit.
I don't know if anybody watches Top Gear. It's a British.
I hear a lot about it, but I haven't seen it.
It's really good, but they go through some old like Russian cars, like communist, like they're built when the USSR was around, and they are absolute dog shit. Every one of them, like, barely run. I can't remember what the name of them though was.
probably because they're like several like decades old, but you know.
No, they would buy. I mean, but there's decades old cars from America that still run, and they run great. Like, you see people all the time fixing them up. This is like, even if they fix these up, they still were shit. Like, you can bring them back to mint condition, and they would break down.
That's because people put more. People in America are so concerned about like, but my cars. Like
that's not only America though. It's each culture has its own distinguishments and its own prides. You go to like Central and Northern Europe, for instance, and they're like what you are able to be proud of, and what makes you have a good social status is your car, your house, and your spouse, right? So you're talking to another guy. Say I'm like German. I'm talking to another German guy. I'm like, hey, you see that car? Yeah, that's my car. Yeah, it's a pretty cool car, isn't it? Those three central things help lead to your social status in those areas specifically. I don't think that America is a little bit car centric. I will absolutely agree with that. It's a little overboard, and we have a ridiculous car culture. It's fucking annoying. Car people, I think, are annoying. I mean, again, you can do it, and that leads back to episode 1 when I was like, you shouldn't make one thing your identity, and that was the whole thing. But I don't think you should make cars your identity. But I don't think America is the only car-centric place. But at the same time, those cars from like the Iron Curtain are dog shit.
I want to hear your thing about personal and private property. I want to hear. I haven't really heard this, and so I kind of want to hear it and think it apart.
Yeah. So essentially, you have your personal property, which is like your toothbrush, your house, the things in your house. And then private property is things like your companies, your apartment buildings, this like private schools, that kind of stuff that me being a communist don't agree with. And that those certain things should be run by the state. And so there's a big difference because I hear a lot of jokes about, okay, now we're communist, hand over your toothbrush, but that's not how it works. You have your own toothbrush and that is your personal property. It's not like the government's gonna come in and be like, all right, so this is actually our toothbrush and that table in your house is our table. Like, no, it's your table. It's your personal property. But
So you have like personal money that you buy personal property with, and then but if you use that money to buy something that other
What's the
people give you money
distinction,
for.
I think what the distinction is, and Ava, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think there's two ways you can put it. I think one way you can put it is personal property is property you actively use and keep within an area that you actively live in, while private property is areas like large pieces of land, apartment buildings, things that you profit off of but you don't actively use.
Exactly.
But I could also say,
so the difference
I also
is whether
think
I use the land.
I think that's kind of what it is. But I think in a more critical way, you could say that personal property is what the government lets you have, and private property is what the government doesn't let you have.
That's pretty arbitrary.
Yes, but
What?
okay, let me
So the
explain.
government actually does say, you don't.
We lied. There is no difference.
toothbrush
They're just
is
your
a-
poop.
is
There is no
property.
difference. Hand over your toothbrush.
No,
I mean,
but
that is
I
arbitrary.
hope at least kind of understand where I'm coming from, because things where you can profit off of other people and exploit other people, things like I said, apartment buildings, like private hospitals, private schools, private prisons, that kind of stuff should all be publicized because people are profiting off of things that shouldn't be profitable. They should be.
Well, that leads a little
What?
bit into subjectivity
It's
versus.
exploiting people whenever
What
an
counts as-
individual or a company owns something, but it is not exploiting people whenever just a very large group of people call themselves a government and do it.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
So it's exploiting people. It's so let's just say a hospital. So it is exploiting people to have a private hospital where people come in and pay, because I guess they I don't follow how that's exploiting them, but it is not exploitation when a government, just a very, very large group of people, owns that instead and makes people go to that. So
Right, because it ensures that nobody else, because you have your central government, right? And then you have the people, you have your citizens, and it ensures that there is equality amongst the citizens and more power to the citizens as well as the government, who basically keeps everything under control and keeps things from monopolies from happening and keeps things from Ancapistan and children in coal mines from happening.
now, how does the government run what do people just do this out of the goodness of their hearts?
Actually, so that's an interesting question, because in the Soviet Union, towards the middle of it, people had actually developed a completely different mindset. I've watched several documentaries on it where you talk to people who were in the Soviet Union, and before the fall of the Soviet Union, they felt like they weren't working for themselves, they were working for the benefit of others. And once the Soviet Union fell, they all of a sudden had to start working for themselves, and they said life became a lot more dull and a lot more sad because they, instead of feeling more like a community, they felt like they were working against each other, and it was more competitive, where before it was more they were working towards a group effort, towards one goal, working towards a prosperous country.
Just to kill all the other people that don't believe.
Well, I think that's that leads into a little bit of objectivism versus subjectivism, and I think that's scary. And I should say objectivism versus subjectivism, and with that individualism versus collectivism. And I think that far left ideas rely way too much on collectivism, and you could say that the far right economically ideas rely too much on individualism, and I think that could certainly hold water as well. But far left economically
Are you trying
ideas.
to make the assumption that something in the middle is better?
Well, so I'm trying to think of a good way to, I guess, formulate my argument. I think collectivism is dangerous. I think
Wow.
working towards one thing and because it destroys the individual.
I don't. It's also not just to destroy the individual. There is a innate problem with collectivism. Well, it's all. I guess by collective, I also have to assume it is centrally planned because that is. I mean, there is no other really way a collective society could work besides being a centrally planned society. And the problem with centrally planned society is there is too much. There's too much data to be gathered for one person, or even 1,000 or millions of people to do it and all centrally planned. There's too much data, and even if they could somehow obtain all the data, there's no way to take that data and turn that into information to be used to make a decision. So
See, I have a question for you though. What is so important about, like, why do you value individualism so much? Like, why is that such an important thing for you?
Are you talking to me or Cole?
A little bit of both.
for me, it's a philosophical thing of that every person has the right to life, liberty, and property. So there's that automatically shuns collectivism because collectivism is saying somebody else can tell you what you can do without your consent. And number two, I just think that
I mean, people have different goals in life, so like, just because the government wants to get one thing done that doesn't mean everyone else should be forced into that.
Right, and they weren't necessarily forced into it. I mean, in the Soviet Union in particular, people went to school and like women and men had equal opportunity. They could go into pretty much whatever job they want, except they were ensured a job. They were ensured a job because they were all educated properly and they put a lot of emphasis on their education system, and they were all able to go into what they were good at, what they wanted to do, and they were able to prosper by helping the community.
I agree with that whenever there were actual instances of farmers told to, you have to come over here and farm this, or even factory workers told, you have to farm now. We need food, so you need to farm now, not knowing how to farm, and then causing millions of deaths because they can't feed the people. I mean, I'm not gonna I'm not gonna try to go in the meme of, oh, you're not gonna have food.
Oh, 100 million deaths.
But it did happen. It's not like a myth. Are you gonna say it's a myth?
Well, the 100 million.
I'm not gonna say. I mean, even if it's a million people.
It's. I think it's estimated to be more around 8 million. I think that it was recently a bunch of very far left people came out and they were like, "Hey, there's this information. We try to make it unbiased. Here's where all those numbers came from," and the number was much, much lower than 100 million. But it is still in the millions. It's definitely still.
Yeah, and that's even if it is 8 million, that's more than the Holocaust. Which I don't want to hear the fucking.
You don't want to hear it,
Holocaust
okay.
too, but
And I won't say anything.
But 8 million is still way more than. I mean, even if 10,000 people died because of starvation because of what the state did, that is still it says that the state did something wrong, and that should not be tried again. 8 million people, if it was on the low estimate of 8 million people, that's still 8 million lives.
Oh no, they had a bad crop season. A lot of people died. It's all the government's fault. All of it, the whole thing.
Bad crop season, we have bad crop seasons here. 8 million people don't die because of starvation. I mean, it's not. I mean, Mike has a farm. He can have a bad crop season. That doesn't mean his family dies.
Or does it?
It doesn't. Whoa.
Some government officials come up to Micah's farm and they shoot him in the head.
Yeah.
You didn't produce enough corn, sir. Put your head against the wall. No, I'm not a pedophile.
I mean, and that's just Russia. I mean, you also have China that did the same. They did the same thing. And then also, I mean, and then you can look at Cambodia too, but that was more just them actually.
Pol Pot.
Yeah, Pol Pot literally just killed anybody with glasses because he thought.
Yep.
Smart people.
Didn't the life expectancy at that time go down to 19 years of age? Or something like that?
Yeah.
That was
The life expectancy
Which is
in Cambodia was
18. It was 18.97 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But
One of the few
getting back to what you just said about how if a lot of people die from something, then it shouldn't really be tried again. I feel like a lot of people like to focus on the Soviet Union's their hunger issues or like their famines or whatever because of what it's associated with. It's associated with communism, and we're all from a nation that is so heavily stigmatized against communism that of course we're going to latch on to anything that would allow us to not like something.
Right,
In
like
the
I
world
could go
today-
off and talk about all of these things that I don't like about capitalism, that capitalism
do.
is done wrong. And I do.
So
But you guys are so like
People aren't-
you guys are
So I think
caught up
I
in
definitely
this
don't
stuff.
think, especially in the last 10 years, more than 20 years, with the rise of like Bernie Sanders and that sort of thing, I definitely think that the Overton window of and what is acceptable in discussion is definitely expanded, and it expanded way more left than it has right, at least economically. I think that talks
so it's
about
like
communism
Overton-
and about socialism are completely fine. Now, or they're much more fine than they were before, and we see these huge social media people and these huge
Oh,
people
are you
on social
just
media platforms.
assuming that I like Bernie Sanders?
No, I think so. I think Bernie Sanders is a fucking moron, but that's a whole other. That's a whole other
Yep.
talk.
Yeah.
Anyways,
The far lefty and the centrists agree that the middle left is cringe.
Well, the far
But-
left is like, he's not far enough.
He's not far enough. You see that thing where it's like you see these Republicans and they're like, "Oh, Biden's a puppet of the far left," and then you see far left people and they're like, "God, we wish."
Yeah, honestly. For real.
the most
Like
establishment guy.
someone I told some Republican dude I don't like Bernie Sanders. I think he's a good guy and he has a good heart, but I just don't think that what he's doing is like working for anybody, and it's not. And they were like, "Wait, so you don't like Bernie Sanders and you're a leftist?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And they got so confused. They're like, "I'm sorry, what? Bernie Sanders is so far left. He's ruining America. He's going to establish Soviet communism." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, definitely."
Well, he was a communist at one
Communism
point.
is when you destroy America.
I don't like Bernie, but
Yeah.
one thing you can definitely understand is that for the most part, he's been very, very like hard placed in his opinions. He hasn't
he's
changed
consistent.
much. And you
He's
see, like,
consistent.
he's very consistent, and I definitely admire that.
consistently wrong. I
He's,
mean,
but I believe he was a
I mean,
communist
like-
at one point. And
He was a Marxist, which isn't necessarily. I mean, it's
guys, I'm not
Far
a
left,
communist.
but-
I'm a Marxist, Leninist, Maoist, pee pee poo poo.
Oh, by the
No,
way, if
it's-
you want to talk about people getting what you are wrong, walk a mile in my shoes as a libertarian, and like everybody Republican is like you're a fucking liberal, and everybody liberal is like you're a right wing like racist, and it's just like how about fuck both of those? Like,
Right.
no.
I think that
Okay, so-
the libertarians focus much more on like the economy and government, and I feel like the whole because we have that American like one-dimensional line of left to right, and culture is all
I know.
all mixed in there. So you can say I'm a rightist, but I'm culturally a little bit more left, and Americans will get confused as fuck. And like
Yep.
I wish I could be politically ignorant again. I miss
Same.
it. I miss it, dude.
I miss it too.
I
life
miss
was
being just
simpler.
apolitical, but I'm glad I didn't bounce around the compass a bunch. But
We're not
I
gonna talk about it,
finally
right?
found we're not gonna talk about it, but I finally found a place that I like, so we're gonna stay there.
well, there you go. As long as I guess you're cemented in your beliefs.
Yeah, I have.
Hopefully,
been
you're
for about
cemented in your
a year
beliefs.
now.
Hopefully,
Oh, I have been for a
Oh,
while now.
my views are gonna change next week.
you're scheduled to change next week.
Yeah.
You roll like a four-sided die to pick which corner of the compass you go to next.
I do.
I don't think it's
still wanna go-
four-sided. I think there's a lot more sides than that.
No, you just pick which corner.
Oh yeah.
I kind of do want to go back to this personal and private property thing because
Oh my god!
I mean, I mean, this is your thing. Like,
It is my thing.
and I do want to understand it. I mean, because it's to me, it honestly doesn't make any sense as to why you can own something for you, but you can't own something that's also for you, but something that you can use to make money or do any like. I just don't understand because if you don't have that, how does? I mean, I guess it goes back to like you people are like, oh, they just wanted to do it. It's like, well, a lot of people didn't want to do it, so what do you do with them?
Wait, what are you talking about? You just went from personal private
Because
property
I went
to
through,
people
sorry, I
not
went
wanting to
through your
work.
argument about how, like, I went through the personal private property, and then if there is no private property, why do people want to do things? And you had talked about because they just want to do it for their fellow man. I'm saying, well, what about those people that don't want to do it for their fellow man? What do you do with them?
Shot in the back of the head. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. No, No, but the thing is that like you would see in the Soviet Union that people were just educated right. You know, here in America, it's
They were
like you can do
educated right.
anything you want with your life, and people take that and say, "Oh, I can do anything I want. That means I'm not gonna work." And you just see so many people who just don't do anything with their lives. But in the Soviet Union in particular, they put so much emphasis on education. You know, like I said earlier, men and women were treated the exact same in the education system. Um, and they were given this equal opportunity that you still are just kind of now getting a glimpse of in America. And um it was just more encouraging, definitely. The education system in the Soviet Union was much more encouraging, and it's not necessarily because they wanted to do it, but it's because they felt obligated to, because it was
So,
their duty as a citizen of the Soviet Union to better
so
their
they
nation.
could choose what they wanted to do, and you're saying, but
Yes.
there was an equal. So somebody that, let's just say, I mean, there's somebody that's not smart, but they wanted to be a rocket scientist. They had the chance. They had the equal opportunity to be a rocket scientist, even though they were not.
They could learn and try to prove themselves. I mean, they could definitely go that extra mile and try, but it wouldn't necessarily work out for them if it wasn't smart, and then they would fall back on
And-
another option. And
Well,
And
see,
if
that's
and if it didn't work out for him,
that's
then
not what you're
what?
saying, though.
what you're implying is that people are born, they're going to be smarter, they're going to be dumb. That's not how education works. If you are stimulated mentally while you were young, even if like people would think that you're like lower or higher when it
I mean,
comes to
some
like
people are
ability to
like
understand.
some people like things click much more easily to them.
Yeah,
Well, yeah,
that's,
but that has
that doesn't follow that you can just from like. That's I don't think that's scientific to where you could just say you can make. I mean, if we just educate all the kids the same from the beginning, or give them something like everybody would be the same level of intelligence. Like,
Well, yeah, there's differentiation between every human being. I'm not saying everyone's going to be the same, but that's not how people
Right.
work. Like, if you stimulate people
Right,
while
and-
they're okay, go ahead.
And another thing is that's where the each according to ability, each according to like their needs, that's kind of where that comes from. Because if people are able to do something, then they will do that and get what they need. Because, you know, if somebody isn't capable, because I believe in equity over like the equality, because like a family of 10 shouldn't be getting the same as a family of 4. The family of 10 should be getting more. But from each according to their ability, what one can do, and then supplying to their needs what they need in order to live a comfortable life. But that's just the way that I see it, that they should have that ground and that means, and that they should do what they are able to do and be ensured that they will have a comfortable life, whether they're of extremely high intelligence or whether they are, you know, just born a little less able, you know, like some sort of disability. They should still be given an opportunity to do what they can. And I
So-
really stand by that.
So I'm guessing the government doesn't. I mean, I guess you're looking at Russia or the USSR as it was. I guess you don't agree with the way they did war or what they were doing with their military. Do you agree with what they did with their?
What do you mean? Like, what in particular with their military?
I mean, starting little wars all over the world, having a huge military that cost them so much that it pretty much.
Oh wait, you mean America or?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
no, yeah.
I'm gonna
I
say
agree.
I
I
don't
mean-
like the USSR, but I mean.
No, I hate the
It's
U.S.
not
too,
really-
but I'm just saying, like,
Alright.
I'm just asking. This is it has been shown that's pretty much a part of every communist nation that has happened. Is that something that you agree with?
What, a strong military?
No, he's referring to Trotskyism, is what he's talking about.
Oh God, no. I'm fairly
saying-
isolationist.
Keep
It's
that socialism in one country as long as it's not my country.
I don't like Trotsky. I pick him away. I don't. Bad.
I mean, it still happened under Stalin. Stalin still militarized the country.
Well, militarization is
Oh
fine.
yeah, Stalin and Lenin both tried to frickin' nay Poland.
Well, see, I actually have a
Okay,
question
and?
for what my question about your aversion to Trotskyism, Ava, is understanding that a nation is strong as all of the workers work together. So why limit that nation then?
Well, simply because I think a nation should work on the strength of their own nation before expanding into others, and they should ensure that their system that they have in place works before they go off and spread it everywhere else.
You know what that sounds like? At least the first
What?
half of what you said.
Imperialism.
Yeah, I was about
It
to
sounds
say,
like
I
Jordan
didn't-
Peterson's "Clean your room before you go out and do something else." It sounded a lot like that.
Also,
That's the
it's-
neo-Marxism.
Also, okay, that really just sounds like basic imperialism in a nutshell. Like,
It's like,
perfect your own country first. And
and
well,
then
what
go
if a
over-
country
What's
just
wrong
decides,
with that?
okay, well,
Or-
I think my country is perfect. I'm gonna go expand to everywhere else now.
I'm not saying
they
expand
hire-
to everywhere else. I'm just saying, like,
You said focus on your own country before.
well, before going off and trying to spread your ideology. But I'm not saying you have to spread your ideology.
How do you
I'm
spread
just
it?
saying it's an option.
Flyers, some
It's
pamphlets,
an
hand up.
option.
What
It's just-
specifically did you not like about Trotsky? I'd love to know, like, what actually do you dislike, and not just the don't spread it before you got it right, because like that argument could be made like on a state level too. Like, why not just communism in one province then? Why the nation?
By the way, I'm not as ANCAP. I don't care if you practice communism by yourself. Don't give a shit. Totally fine with that. I just want to put that out there.
So, wait. So could you restate that question, please? Because all I got from that is why don't you like Trotsky? Because that's pretty much it in the fact that he was more like trying to put emphasis on going out into other countries, which I don't necessarily believe in. Like, I think that if you have the means to, then, okay. But I don't personally, I'm more, like I said, I'm more isolationist, so I believe that you should stick to one country and keep it there and make sure that your own system works.
But
Well,
didn't
the
that happen under
rationalization-
What if it
Stalin?
doesn't work?
Like,
Then find a new system.
Well, the rationalization
Hmm.
of
so if
communism.
8 million people died because they starved to death,
See,
it's
it's
find a new
funny.
system.
Okay, anyways, it's funny that you bring up the 8 million thing, because I tried to mention this the first time and then I kind of got interrupted. But what I was trying to say, I actually pulled up the stats right in front of me. 3.1 million people die of hunger every year in a world that's roughly I feel like it's an accurate statement to say that the world is it's a capitalist world.
No,
I feel
It is.
I do
So-
I do want to say this though. First of all, it is lower. Second, that's one thing, and then
Oh,
one country within like 5 years.
Okay,
Uh,
but 5 years, and if 3.1 million people die every year, then that's 3, 6, 9, 12, 15 million people in
Where's
5
your
years.
stat coming from on that? I'm curious.
I can send you the link. I literally just Googled how many
Also, are
people
you talking about per country or in the world?
Is that per country or the
Because-
world?
in the world. Like,
Oh, well, the world kind of has like 8 billion people, so I mean.
oh, it's not that bad when it's like the entire world, but like
No,
when
but-
it's the
Oh,
country.
wait,
I
wait,
know.
it's one
Oh no,
country.
the difference is that the country has like a significantly lower population.
Well,
you're doing
one
a
in 6
comparison, so if
Americans.
we want to do a comparison, we can do a comparison between them. And second of all, you also need to look at trends. So how many people died of starvation 50 years ago?
Oh wait, but bear in mind, we're not looking at this when we're talking about communist Russia, though. We're not looking at that. It's just 8 million people
Oh,
died.
yeah, the issue is that it's Russia. It's a single country with significantly less population and more deaths.
Okay, well let's talk
And
about
also,
America.
if
Then.
you look
Let's
at
talk-
how the deaths went up. They didn't go like it's not a trend downwards like it is in the world. If you look at the deaths from starvation over the past 100 years, it is a nice slanted line downwards, like a trend
Okay,
line
well
down.
let's look at America right now. 14.3 million U.S. households are suffering from food insecurity right now.
Oh, that's probably because of the
Die of
COVID.
starvation. We're talking about dying of starvation. I understand food insecurity, but that's also different.
But where do you draw the line, though? Like, he didn't die from starvation. He was just emaciated for months before he was blessed by some corporation that decided to hire him. Where do you draw the line on that, then?
That is the okay.
Whether you're hungry whether your stomach be empty when you die.
Yeah, it's like I don't. There's if you
It's-
work, you can eat, but also like this. And then there was another one that they said, "Oh, you don't have to. We're gonna feed everybody," but they didn't, and these people actually died as compared to in a capitalist system. if you do work, you will have a level of like
Oh boy.
We're talking about real people here. I feel like
I understand that, and so 8 million
Okay.
people actually died. Like it.
Yeah, but we're also now you're putting the onus on the individual to do that, and yeah, that is how things have been for a very long time. But I don't know. I feel like your guys' ideologies are based off of like idealism, and as opposed to like what the real world would actually entail. Like the real when I'm given like real facts about the country that we live in, it's like, oh, we got to look at trends. You got to look at it's the lines and everything.
Saying those people I'm not saying those people don't matter. I'm saying it does, but the trend does matter. If it like in a capitalist system, in any system, you're going to have people that starve and are poor. And
Exactly. So why are you making such a big deal out of?
Oh, because there's
because in the
communism.
communist system,
Because it's communist. Because it's
and there's more.
It's bad because it's
a
communist.
state actually
pretty much.
mandated this, and because of their mandate, because of their actions, the state's actions, people die. Not because of an individual's action that affects themselves and maybe at most their family. It is a state acting, and it affected an entire nation. Like,
so you would rather give that power from a state who is supposed to be, in theory, an altruistic force that takes care of its people. You'd rather give that to a corporation whose only goal is to give good products for the sake of getting money.
Because the end goal of capitalism is to make money. If they can't make money, if people are dead.
You're making money off of people dying of hunger.
Yeah.
How can you make money off people dying of hunger? You have to sell them food.
I feel like that's kind of a contradiction, though. Like, you're making money from people starving.
If you are charging more than what the food is worth, if you are charging,
okay, what is?
If it's too expensive, then how are you going to create a profit if it's too expensive?
That is completely subjective.
Do you not realize how much food is thrown away in America today because of how much it's not worth? It's not profitable to sell to people.
So are you putting that blame on capitalism then?
Yes, I am.
Yes.
That's
Do you
literally
think so? That leads back to the idealism argument as well that you just brought up. Do you think that would change under a different system?
If your system of supply and demand, and it just
do you think that food would?
Hey, let's stop talking over each other, please. I can't hear what's actually being said.
Do you think
I'm just
that?
livid.
And especially with, I think, economically left ideas, especially lib left ideas, you kind of rely on people to be inherently good, you know. And do you think that food wouldn't be wasted nearly as much under a different economic system than capitalism? Do you think that life would be so much grandiose and so much better if we weren't under capitalism?
Look at yourself and ask yourself, if you were looking at starving people on the road, and you're a farmer who throws away hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of like produce that wasn't good enough to be sold at a store but is still edible and still can save people from dying of starvation, would you throw it away, or would you give it to them? Would you throw it away so that you don't have to sell it at a price that's too low for your liking, or would you give it to people who are starving to death?
I don't think
so. The tons of food that is wasted, I don't think that's corporations wasting that food. Right, I think that's
literally
is throwing away the food. How often do you eat your food at dinner and some of it goes in the trash can?
Yeah,
that's not even remotely close to what we're talking about.
Okay, we're talking
about like where they burn their crops, where like
sold.
They burn. Okay, so if you're talking about burning crops,
that's what Cole said. That's not what Ava was.
I know, but I'm just addressing that really quick. Burning crops and chopping down trees and stuff like that. That has to do with soil and agricultural systems and things like that. That's a whole other conversation we can have. But you say that thousands and tons of food is wasted every year in the United States. Is that corporations doing that, or is that just the people doing that?
Let me ask, do you know how diamonds work? Like the actual the diamond trade. Do you know how that works?
No, I don't know how the diamond trade works.
They're creating scarcity, right? By keeping them away from the actual market. They're keeping diamonds out of the market. They're doing that with food as well. It's the same thing, but with food instead of diamonds.
Okay, that's partially true because one, there is a government. Again, we talked about this in the first one. Well, we've talked about with Micah about how there are government subsidies, and so the government has a say over what you do with your food. And there's certain things, and so there was they sometimes have to. The government says you need to destroy a lot of your crop. I think there was a thing just a couple months ago with cherries, of where they like cherry farmers had to get rid of millions of things of cherries, but it was also because of the lockdown. They couldn't ship in cherries and they couldn't just sit on them. Like,
Yeah, they
again,
couldn't make money off of it, and they couldn't just give it to people who were starving.
Honey,
You know?
but you have millions and millions of.
It's
tons
time
of
for your
cherry, like-
decade. It's time for your decade. Economic
So
collapse.
let's just throw it away then, instead of like let's just throw it away, so then the poor people can't have it.
Mhm.
Nothing would be worse than that.
They were forced by the government to throw it away. They weren't like,
Oh, the government made them throw it away.
oh, what, again, but it also comes in. They would have to ship all that, so they had to. They not only
They don't have to ship it to
It's
the
not-
poor people.
you have to pay for shipping, right? It's not like they just can magically will this somewhere. They have to pay for it. They have to process it. They have to get it to them or get it to some organization that can get. They can't just go out and just start handing out bucketfuls, just riding around finding people.
And
And
They
mind
just
you,
do
well,
it.
so why? Looking at the reason why that has to do is because the government doesn't have enough subsidies to pay for all of it to be taken care of, right? But we can give
we-
oh, it's not.
I don't think government subsidies should exist. I think
Okay,
that,
but they do.
Yeah, like, we're talking about the
I don't
real
think-
world here. We're talking
Not
about
Okay,
talking
yeah,
about the
I understand
idealistic
that,
world
like-
and Capistan coal world here.
but also
I mean,
the
doesn't that
government
also kind of work
destroyed
with
a
like your
free
hate for
market
landlords
society.
too?
What's that?
So if you're going off of like, oh well, this isn't your ideal world. This is the actual world, but you also hate landlords. Those are people that providing a place, and while you believe that that should be just given out by the government, they aren't, and therefore landlords are, I guess, required.
Yeah,
you
no,
put
and
They're really
no,
not.
under a capitalist system, I can understand why they're there, but so I'm not going.
Well, I'm just saying, you were saying under Cole's ideal system that would work, but not in this one.
Yeah,
So what's the
Thanks.
difference?
no. So the difference is that essentially what I'm saying is I was talking about my ideal world we weren't bringing the real world into it, but now we're bringing the real world into it,
Yeah,
and he's
you're
trying
making
to
a real world.
apply. Yeah, he was making an argument for his own belief in an argument that was about the real world, where I was just solely talking about my ideology rather than applying that to the real world and the world that we are living in right now.
All right.
I think to
Does
go
that
back
make
to
sense?
saying arguments, the government subsidies, they help to, it's like they can help in those instances, but it overall destroys the market because.
But when you look at let's look at that. So we live in a market, and you're advocating for a capitalist system where, for some reason, food makers, the thing that we have to eat usually 3 times a day is what's suggested. They're not able to compete with anything else. Like it's so like out of whack that there has to be outside influence on that.
No,
And that's
I think
because
it's
there's
getting back to the supply demand.
people
just-
are dying of hunger. You can't tell me there's not a demand for food.
Yes, there's a demand for food, but there's also like people die from hunger because I don't know why, but
Because they
Oh, you
can't
don't know why,
afford
because they
it's
food.
the
can't
cheapest thing
afford
you can eat cheaper than any time in the history of the world. Food has never been cheaper. Food has never been more accessible. Saying that because some people die in this time is against what is going against capitalism is a knock against capitalism. It's like it's so wrong because it is the cheapest it has ever been. It has never been easier to live than now. Like
For one, I would love a source on that.
Yeah,
and-
give me that,
okay,
please.
I mean
You want a source on how food has been cheaper than it ever was before in history?
No, see, I
Or am
understand
I-
that,
or
but
am
that
I
you
doesn't
can literally
necessarily
spend
make
You can.
$3 a day and be filled up with food. Like,
It may not be the most nutritionally appropriate food, but you do have, I
But
suppose,
I
you do have
mean-
a point.
mean,
Well, it's
3
also interesting. Is
hamburgers a day from
I think the
McDonald's.
window
$1
is kind of closing a little bit. And we're gonna try and wrap up here.
Yeah.
We've been recording for how long
About
do
an
we
hour and a
have
half.
here? Like about an hour and a half. What's interesting is there's like 4 to 7 states in the United States that alone provide for 1% of the world's total food. And that's, I believe the big ones are California, Texas, Iowa, Florida, and I believe there's two others that I can't remember right off the top of my head. And they provide for 1% of the world's, that's 70 to 80 billion, million people. That's insane. There is a lot of food out there, and you see these are obviously a lot of arguments. It's like if these 3 billionaires each took half their money and put it into this, then this would end and stuff like that. And that's a whole other argument that we're gonna get into probably soon. But here are our wrapping up. We're gonna try not to get into a whole nother argument / discussion because we're gonna close it up here.
We actually fought this time.
We actually fought this time.
Actually,
I think it's been a little bit more interesting. I thought at first I was worried that this was going to be a little bit more drab because we missed a week, but I think this went well.
By the way, explain why we missed a week. I think.
Oh, I mentioned it. So I mentioned it on the Instagram.
Yeah.
But I'll explain it here. There was some heavy storms. I don't remember the specific word that was used, but they're like hurricane. Yeah, they're hurricane strong winds that are powerful. That are I think they got to 112 miles per hour in Iowa.
Actually, in my city, they're saying that they got up to 130.
130, so it's insane. But that is the essential thing. Hold on. But you guys want to give your closing thoughts real quick?
I just want to say this real quick. Just our hearts go out to people of Iowa, Chicago. There was a lot of damage just last week, and that's why we didn't record last week because Ava's house got hit. So
yeah,
and she lost all power.
Yeah, most of the people in my city still don't have power. We are my family has been super fortunate, and we got our power back almost a week after the storm hit. But most people are still without power right now, so it's really not a good situation.
So I was going to say this at the beginning of the podcast, but I'll say it here. There's going to be a link, at least one link, in the description, as well as in our Instagram bio and in our Discord and on any listening platforms. This link will lead to a place you can donate to areas in the Midwest area, specifically Iowa and the areas that have been hit the hardest. That way you can donate money if you'd like to help the cause. Any amount is helpful. This has been the Extremists Podcast. Again, I'm Alex, the center position. Thank you for listening. Again, you can support us by checking the link in the description of this video or in our profile. You can go to our Instagram, the.extremists. You can find us on YouTube at The Extremists, Spotify, Anchor. We're on like a dozen platforms at this point. And you can find links that'll lead you to everything that we have. Feel free to, again, subscribe to our YouTube, follow our Instagram, and join our Discord. I think that's about it. There you go. He snuck it in again.
Yes.